So everybody's cutting and baling and trying to get the most that they can because our winters are so long, you have to be able to feed your cattle. So that's a farmstead. That's actually my best friend, her family farm. So it's the reason that we ended up out here, because we came out here for her birthday party. The closest town, my technical address town we'll be going through is Luverne.
Okay.
And Luverne is like population 30. So that's like the cemetery.
That's how many people have died in this town? That's
Yeah.
not a lot of people.
No, it's a very small cemetery, a very small town. So there's 20 houses or so. Not a lot. It's very small. And then there's the elevator, and then here's the train line. I could probably. That elevator is the jobs for most of the people in this area that aren't farmers. The rest of the town, I mean, there's a lot of farmers out here. This is a high traffic road, so we get more traffic than anyone else does. But compared to Fargo, when you have hundreds of cars going by in a day, out here you have like 30, maybe.
Yeah, you can see it right there. That's our unit.
That's ours?
Yeah. That's ours, yeah.
Kayaks.
Right there. Pull in here.
Yay! Top up. That one?
That's an old train depot. Used to be where you'd go and wait for the train.
So this is a 1903 school.
So it was like a one-room schoolhouse.
Yes, and it was actually across the river, and they moved it in here. So that's a farmhouse.
Okay.
That was actually, if you look over here where that cluster of trees is between those two wind towers,
Okay.
that was its original site. This was the first building that was here. No, I'm wrong. No, that was the last. The depot was first.
Dude, this is our unit. It's a train unit. They moved the train tracks. Mom, they moved the train tracks. Can we go in?
The depot was moved here in 1979.
Okay.
So it came from just 8 miles down the road. The guy that moved he moved all of these buildings. And so he had this idea that he wanted to raise his kids out here with some history buildings. So we joke that we're going to get a church and a saloon, and we're going to have our own town.
So did you guys just sort of have a dream to live in the countryside, or?
No, we lived in Fargo, and we came out here on a whim, and then there was a house for $17,000. And I'm like, that's not even a car. So we went to look at it, and we said, no, that the other place needed a ton of work, and asked the realtor to show us something else. And he said, well, actually, there's a place that this family uses as a lake home, so it's vacant, so we can go show it. And we pulled in, and it was all wildflowers and just beautiful. And we're like, we didn't even go in the house. We're like, we're buying it.
And affordable?
Yeah, out here, there's not a lot of jobs. So, I mean, we commute for jobs, so it makes the cost of living a lot cheaper.
No?
All of them are wrong.
She might have got it. She might have got it.
Okay, I saw this. Wait. Broadview is the township we're in right now. So the guy that moved it here, he actually had that sign made. So it did say Hannaford. It's a town about 8 miles that way.
Okay.
And that's where the railroad actually runs through.
So it would have been a passenger stop?
It was everything. So passenger, cargo, all of that stuff. So there's a train bridge that runs up, it's really high in the sky. So this is the bridge that's right over here. This one's 187 feet high and 3/4 of a mile long. It's one of the tallest train bridges in the US. And so that was the main commerce. So that's how they hauled everything across the state. So that was the Northern Pacific Railroad. And then right before they closed the trains down, this was a blizzard on that same track. I feel like North Dakota wasn't really highly populous because of the cold. So the trains definitely helped that. A lot of the towns, there's a lot of little towns around here, and they were all along the railroad so that they could do things with the railroad before highway systems were really super integrated. All of these little towns were so small that they didn't have enough, I believe. They were getting short-staffed and the winters were bad, and so they rerouted the trains. So that's what made this band kind of close down. Now essentially it hauls cargo on that line. There wasn't even mail that was delivered here before we moved here. So we put up the mailbox and had to find our address and all of that stuff. So like the little bump out where there's the windows, so that would actually be your ticket booth. And so inside on this half would have been where they would have any cargo that they needed to store. You know, the doors were for the people. The big doors are for the cargo. There's actually 2 of those doors, one on each side. But
It still works.
yes.
It's 100-something years old.
Right. 1890, so.
This is probably the original paint.
As far as I know, nothing really has been done. Up there, it's not worn, so maybe at one point somebody did repaint it, but I know that this is all the original siding. The ticket window is here, and then if you look on the flooring, this is where probably the desk was, because all of the ink splatters are around it. So they were able to write and sign on their tickets, dip their pens, sign right along this desk area. I'm sure somebody dumped an inkwell there, and so yeah, the floor is discolored here because that's where the desk was. Oh, that's all open. They used to have a guy that sat here. His shift was to be in there the whole time. Then when his 24 hours shift, and then somebody else came in and replaced him, he would have been here until his relief came. So you never really know what their schedules were back then. If there was 3 or 4 of them, they would rotate throughout the week. And he would have had a small area that he would have stayed in when there aren't trains passing through, that he probably would have taken a little nap and hung out. It would probably be a little bit more comfortable chair, and that's about it, because his job was to stand watch for those trains. You know, they were scheduled, but not like we have schedules today where you know, like at 8:02 that train is arriving. It wasn't quite as much of a science at that point. You know, your switch operators were a guy standing out there along the railroad moving a bar. Like now we have electronic switches. They push a button, the switch moves to put them on a different track. But before, it was a guy with a bar moving that train track manually. there was a lot of people looking for places to put their campers over the 4th of July weekend. And we said, well, we have power at the train depot. So we decided that we would put this for a camper parking and camping situation. And everybody that messaged us said, well, we want to stay in the depot. And we're like, well, the depot's really old. It's not climate controlled. There's not a whole lot of amenities. And they're like, no, we don't care. We want to stay in the depot. Well, at that point, this loading dock was shot. It had huge holes in it, and there were tire rims filling holes, and just the way we had purchased it.
That's why you need to hit it.
So we kind of went to work slowly doing the deck, because you don't realize these big thick boards that they use nowadays, they're like $23 a piece. So just redoing the deck is an expensive feat, and we wanted to keep the character, but that wasn't possible for safety.
I want.
So this room, this is where they used to store all of the random storage things that didn't go in the other big room. Personal luggage, stuff like that. Everything at that era seemed to have wainscoting. It's a tongue and groove material, so you have a plank and they all meet together. And I'm guessing that that was the easiest, most functional thing at the time. They've refinished the floors before we bought the place. So I'm not positive if this would have been like the station master's quarters. When we bought the place, this was going to be our guest house. So it was a plan to have this as mother-in-law space. And so this was going to be the bedroom, and obviously because of the closets. And then that was going to be the living room, dining room area. And then more people that wanted to stay wanted more beds. I purchased the bed, but it's actually made of pallets. It's repurposed. So they took the wood apart and put it all together, and then put casters and kind of made a bed frame out of it. So before plumbing, this was the toilet. So it obviously has a big bucket inside that you carry out and dump and then bring back in. So in the rich homes, this would be next to your bed. It was in your chamber, hence the chamber pot. And so you were fancy if you had this toilet. And it's all porcelain. The stove is super old and super touchy, but essentially it is all different bricks lining so that when you light something, it holds the heat in. It still operates, but there are things that need to be updated on it. And then this door kind of falls off now because it's so old, but I don't even know if I can. And then that's where you empty your ash. It's probably full of ash right now. When we first moved out here, our goal was to disconnect from the city. So the first winter, we tried to heat the house with wood. We tried to not use as much electricity. We looked into getting solar. Like, we were really trying to do like an off-the-grid thing, and it was really difficult because of the winters. Even people that have been here their whole lives hate our winters. In the winters, there's not a lot to do, so trying to be completely disconnected, like we tried to completely avoid having Wi-Fi. We enjoyed the disconnect a ton. I would say more in the summer. At first, I was kind of thinking that we're strange, but a lot of people that come out here have said the same things, that the peace, the reconnecting with the earth and that kind of stuff is definitely what brings the charm here. Every now and then we'll get a couple city people that are like, so what are we supposed to do? I'm like, whatever you want. And they're like, so do you have activities planned? And I'm like, no, it's just kind of chill out and relax and enjoy nature, go for a walk. Our goal at some point is to build a small half bath with like a stand-up shower and a toilet and some running water. The issue being the winters here, keeping the pipes from freezing. So then that would mean we would have to insulate underneath this whole building, because unlike most buildings, this isn't a foundation building. It is on railroad ties. So the complete underneath of this is hollow, it's empty. So when we put pipes in, that would mean that we would have to either fill that in or to actually put walls around it and insulate it. We plan on making this part a kitchenette with countertops, the fridge. But in the meantime, we decided to buy some old heritage pieces to store utensils. And so we kind of just filled this with all the things that you could use without having a fully functioning kitchen. So there's plates and then we have like a hot plate, and pots and pans and stuff to cook with, because when we first moved out here, we didn't have a stove in the schoolhouse. So we cooked off a hot plate for the first year. This is the schoolhouse. This kitchen was added on and we've been redoing it slowly. So then this was actually where the school desks were, and that's the original chalkboard.
They used to have classes in here. Everybody in the whole town would go to school together.
And then the wood stove. So their entire family lived in this one building, and they had 2 kids and 2 adults that slept up there.
Wow.
And shared the kitchen. This was their dining room, living room, family room. In here, we call this the dressing room. So he started working on flooring, but the only closet in the whole house, and then the bathroom that they added in. We're planning on remodeling all of this stuff, and making this all a big bathroom. Definitely very backtrack living. I mean, when we came and saw the place, that was kind of our idea, was a little bit of a step back in time. But like,
Now up there and see what it's got.
we really liked living in Fargo, but like having kids, they can't go ride their bike around the block without you following behind them. They kind of get to the point where they sit on their phones and sit on the couch. One of the things that we were so excited about when we moved out here was that there's like actual wildlife. And we have hundreds of deer that hang out in our yard in the winter. They just pool kind of right up in this area. They are not fazed by anything. There was actually 2 outhouses on the property, but one wasn't here when we bought it. And so the other outhouse is right here. And they're pretty old. And whoever owned it in the past put a bunch of foreign and bands and random postcard type things. We don't really know where a lot of the places are or who the people are. So we joke that this is our only bathroom when guests come. We like to give them a hard time. We say, oh yeah, the outhouse is where you have to go.
There's a window, right?
Yeah, little ventilation. So
That's funny.
we tried cleaning it up and making it a little nicer, but the birds and wildlife use it more than we do, so we just kind of let them do that. A lot of the pieces that are on this farm, I believe this was just a piece of land that they moved everything into. We don't do the whole Wi-Fi and TV and all of that stuff. But that's also been like a big selling point for us, because a lot of people are like, no, I don't have to respond to work because I don't have service for 4 days. And they enjoy that. There's only a few roads that you can cross the river on.
Yeah.
So this is a major traffic road, which you've seen our major traffic. And it's really funny because we never used to wave to people, and then when you move out here, pretty much everybody that goes by knows you. So now you just like, you automatically wave to everyone because they'll be like, oh, hey, I saw you in the yard the other day. So it's very different, but it's great.
Yeah.
It's like different in an amazing way. So we don't have to worry about much out here. If we want to move a church in, well, I do. Josh doesn't want us to use up any of our acreage, but I want to get a church and a saloon so that we could have our own little town. And I think it would be awesome just for people to come and stay and have the old saloon, and then, you know, maybe even like a grocery store, the corner market.